Hello, and welcome back to another episode of Critical Reactions with your host, Bryan. Today we're going to be starting a new week. This week's theme is something I'm quite excited for. We're looking at jazz fusion, which I have a bit of a jazz background. I love jazz fusion. If you follow me on Twitter, I posted a video of Miles Davis performing Burn, and just every solo in that video is just phenomenal. It is almost a perfect rendition of that song, and it really put me in the mood for jazz fusion this week. So I posted it, trying to get other people to kind of see what we're going to be checking out this week. It's a little different than the rock and metal we tend to look at, but has some rock influences in it. I'm super excited. I hope you guys are excited. Today we're going to be checking out Thank You Scientists. We've had them on the channel before, and today we're going to be looking at a song called Chromology. So let's get into this. Yeah, so at the beginning of every 4-bar phrase, we're actually starting on the offbeat, which is really cool. Some really great horn stingers in here. Yeah, really cool arpeggiation there. Ooh. Yeah. Ooh. Yeah, so we have this really interesting rhythm here, and then they're still doing the offset beat 1 at the beginning of this pattern, and it's just really moving into some really wild time feels. Yeah. And the way all the instruments are sort of moving through this melody line, kind of trading it off, beginnings and endings. Yeah. Ooh, that triplet into this. Oh, we're getting funky.
Oh, it's a little bit of chrome.
What?
Chrome.
Ooh. That coloring went way outside the lines. Real gut to me. Love it though. Nice little run going on the right side. Yeah. Yeah, these competing lines are so good right here. Ooh. Yeah, this is why bass and drum are the rhythm section. Yeah, classic transition there. Yeah, let's fill in the space. Ooh. Yeah, we're moving to new modes. Yeah. Dang, this song just will not end. I'm loving it. Yeah, compressing the tone a bit and rerunning that last run as a transition, that's genius. we gonna close this out on halftime, or are we not here? How much longer do we got? Ooh, ooh. Dude, that accent work in the yeah, that drum work right there.
Perfect.
Oh man, pulling some old Street Fighter 2 sound bites. All right. So I've enjoyed Thank You Scientists in the past. Uh they haven't hit me 100%. Some of the songs have some sections that just didn't work for me. I think that was in the first song we checked out. Something just didn't work for some reason. I don't remember what that was. But this, I think, is the first song I've heard from them that I'm just 100% connecting with. It is so good from start to finish, and I need to see a live performance of this. Something I didn't really mention too much, and I don't know how much it's going to crop up here, but to me, jazz is a live performance. There's something living about solos. There's definitely times to get pre-recorded jazz stuff. There are those solos that make and break a song. And there's the solos that's kind of the definitive solo for that song for you personally or for me. Everybody has their own preferences. Um but jazz is to me one of the musical forms that is better live than studio, and it's because of the fact that it changes. You can go see pretty much any rock, metal, pop, hip hop concert, and it's more or less exactly what you're getting on the studio, just in a different environment. Um, but, well, at least for me, anyways, I tend to go to those shows more for the show, the performance aspect of it. Being in the crowds and seeing the performers up there, but it's usually not an improvement over the studio version in most ways, especially if they tend to be more of a studio band. Maybe they use a lot of backing tracks. Um, Maybe they really flesh out their sound by double tracking instruments or whatever. Um, and just it's just very rare for me, in my experiences, for a live band to surpass their studio work, which is why I tend to listen to a lot of studio stuff on this channel. It tends to have the better audio, and it's where you can really hear that they've honed in and perfected the sound that they wanted for the song. But jazz is more of this living, breathing, flowing version of music. So the essence of jazz to me is live. So it just kind of dawned on me. We did listen to a studio recording of this, and it makes me wonder, not that I wouldn't wonder with a live one, how much of it is improvised. Because again, that's part of the living and breathing aspect of jazz to me. Um, is that that is not a Chromology. If one of these recommendations right here was a live Chromology, we might have just spent another 10 minutes listening to it again. I really dug it. Um, so, but I'm going to try to approach this from what I understand from Thank You Scientist and the fact that I hear a lot of very hand created portions to the song. So I don't know how much of this song is composed and how much is improvised. Well, I should say pre-composed and composed on the fly would be another way of wording that. But I think I'm going to err towards most of it being pre-composed because there's just too many things with too many people lining up in some of these solo sections for uh, for the solos to be heavily um, improvised, at least from my point of view, first time listening, kind of picking up on cues. It could be that maybe they improvise, 4 bars, but they kind of have a general gist of what they're going to do. And then the next 2 bars, maybe they're going to line up with the band, and then they get another, 6 bars of free form. And maybe it just kind of bounces back and forth between that, which gives it these pockets of pre written, really strong composition with the group rather than strong solo composition. Um, and maybe that's how they went about it. I don't know. If so, it is a phenomenal little weaving that they do there. That would be pretty cool. Switching between the improvised and the pre-composed fairly regularly is actually a really cool way to write a song, because then you get the flowing aspect, the breathing aspect, the new every time you listen aspect of jazz, while also really getting to hammer home some of the large, I could almost say set pieces that popped up so many times in this track that I'd almost say we've heard before too in Thank You Scientist. They have these really big moments where the band comes together and they do really neat things as a whole, whether it's all coming together to emphasize specific rhythmic patterns. Maybe they come together to emphasize a chord progression that helps transition into a new idea. Maybe it's just a really cool line that has a bit of bouncing around between instruments to really flesh it out. Or, multiple moving lines, get some counterpoint in there. They've done all of these throughout this song. And they just seem to be really strong masters of multi instrument composition, giving a lot of instruments lead lines to help uh, change the song in ways, to transition, to emphasize, to, whatever. Um, the interesting thing, though, that I found is that while it is jazzy, for sure, it's it's different than what I expected coming into Jazz Fusion Week. And I mentioned this at the beginning. I linked a Miles Davis performance, and that is kind of what I was expecting to get out of this. The only thing sort of rock-ish about that performance was pretty much the guitar tones, which definitely have a rock a rock feel to them. They're a little more distorted than I would normally utilize in a jazz setting. Um, but the rest of it is still very firmly rooted in jazz with some rock influences, whereas this seems to be rooted in rock with some jazz influences, and it's sort of on the other side of the coin here. So that mixed with the fact that sure, I'm not sure, but I believe most of this is pre-composed rather than improvised. Uh, it's a different division of the two genres that I was expecting. Like I said, I was kind of expecting 80% jazz, 20% rock, uh, and this is sort of on the other side of that. Rock's getting a little more than 50% here. Um, that has nothing to do with the song itself, just sort of my notions coming into the week and what I'm expecting out of it. And but like I said, I really, really love this song. There's so many cool things about it. Um, what there was one thing I really wanted to talk about. Oh. So they have several solo sections in here, which is a little different from traditional jazz. Usually in traditional jazz, um, there might be one or two solo sections, but they sort of get wedged in between the melody. You normally start the song with the melody and then you go into the swing section, and the swing section can take 10, 15, 20 times as long as that melody did. And then you come back, you hit the melody, and you end the song. You revisit the melody and you end the song. Sometimes we might have an intermission between two solo sections, so you'll have your your lead melody you start with, and then you move into a solo section, and then maybe you revisit the melody, maybe it's a bridge, something that brings back some pre-composed structured music, then you hit the next solo section, then you finish out. And the solo sections don't just have to be one person, it could be, three people getting 32 bars each or something. So your solo sections are really the lifeblood of traditional jazz music, with the melodies sort of um, acting as the glue that holds everybody's solos together. And in here, we saw a lot more structured music than solos. But what I think is interesting, what I want to bring up, is that in traditional music, we tend to have the solo section, and usually you'll have your rhythm section, your drums, your bass, your piano, maybe an electric guitar. Um, and they are sort of laying down the chord progressions and the rhythmic aspects for the soloist. And then the rest of the instrumentals, your trumpets, your trombones, your saxophones, maybe your clarinets and flutes, flugelhorns. I mean, there really isn't a non jazz instrument, but there's definitely jazz staples. But the rest of the instruments in your band, they might have some phrases to play throughout, maybe some stings. We saw some of that here with some trumpet stingers coming in underneath solos. We also had some really nice swells to lead out of like a 16 bar phrase. And then they'll do like a nice chord progression that swells. And then they'll back off because you still got to give that emphasis to the soloist. And you see these little ideas, but for the most part, the solo section does not change. It's a constant loop until the soloists are done soloing, and you're going to move on to, like I said, the bridge or the outro melody or whatever, when you return back to the structured music. And what's really interesting here is that there was only one solo, I think, one solo section where two instruments played over the same thing, and I think we had a muted trumpet passing it on to a saxophone. It was one of the first solos, and I kind of assumed that that would be what I was in for because that's how they started their solo sections. That's what I'm expecting, and every solo section after that had a transition into a new foundational work. So whereas in jazz, the soloists really get the spotlight because the music underneath doesn't change much. You might have some, like I've mentioned before, you might have your rhythm section kind of participating in rhythms that the soloist is playing. If they, especially if people play together for a long time, they start to hear each other's little quirks and some tendencies that they might get into. You might be able to pick up, oh, he's doing like da 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 da, and you get this rhythm. So the drummer might come in with snares, ga 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 ga. Um, and then they might look at each other and give some nods or some physical cues, saying all right, I'm going to move on now or something like that. And you might get these moments where things line up, but for the most part, everything under the soloist is going to remain static. And these guys create multiple different solo sections for the solos to play over, and the sections themselves kind of influence how the solos play, what kind of emotions they play around with. I mentioned, oh, maybe I didn't mention it. I think I thought it. Oh, no, I did mention it. It was the organ one at the end. I think it was an organ. The way that the slides were going, it definitely sounded like a keyboard with one of those rolling wheels on the side. That's what the slides sounded like to me, though. It also kind of felt like a violin texturally, so I'm not sure if it was a violin, just with some really cool technique going on, um, or if it was like a violin-esque pad sample on a keyboard. Um, but that part at the end, I said, oh, we're changing some modes. We hit Phrygian for a second. We hit some other stuff that was very much outside of the usual chordal modes that we were playing around with throughout the rest of the track. And a lot of that was dictated by what was going on beneath it. The music underneath was shifting modes, so the soloist was allowed to shift modes. Um, and that solo felt very different from the rest of the solos, not just because of the performer and their tendencies and how they write music, but because of the music actually going on around it. And we can actually see that throughout a few of the other sections, and it really allows all the solos to, I don't know how to say this without being condescending to to jazz standards, uh, but it allows the solo sections to continue to create. Okay, I'm just gonna say it. It allows them to not be boring. Uh, so it takes. I think that jazz kind of gets a bad rep because a lot of it is unstructured music, but also because a lot of the foundational work doesn't change. You get a nice 10-minute song, and 6 or so minutes of that is a lot of the same music on the bottom, and it's really about listening to the soloist. Um, and I don't know if just a lot of people aren't used to that. Maybe they don't have the training for it. I know, like metal, jazz can take some practice, and it's something you really have to build an ear for. And maybe that's just it. But what these guys do is they make sure that the underlying music stays interesting, so that even to somebody who doesn't like jazz, possibly because of the staticness in the solo sections, we end up with music. Well, we end up with solo sections that are interesting on both the foundational level and the melodic level, and it creates this really nice movement throughout the entire song where it doesn't feel like just these gaps of melody, solo, melody, and we're done. We actually have this really nice composition, this journey through the song. So it's a very different approach to writing jazz style music than the standards that we have. That we still play. You go to a jazz gig and you're pretty much required to know the standards at this point. Um, So yeah, it's a really cool, interesting take on my idea of jazz and sort of interpreting it through the lens of rock and maybe even a little bit of prog rock. I do hear a lot of prog rock influence in here. I don't know if it's just the tone, some of it's also the writing, how many different styles and movements we went through. The song was very different from start to finish. So um, I am hoping sorry. I am hoping to get into some more traditional jazz through the week, but it is interesting to see sort of the other side of this, where it is more rock with jazz influences rather than jazz beginning to incorporate some of rock's concepts. But those are my thoughts on Thank You Scientist Chromology. This is where you guys come in. Hit me up in the comments. Let me know if you enjoyed it or not. Anything that stuck out to you that you particularly enjoyed, maybe some things that just didn't work for you. And also, maybe if anybody has some history on actually, I'm just probably going to go look it up myself because, like I said, this is close to what I was expecting, but it's still a very different experience. And I'm wondering if maybe the definition of jazz fusion has just changed over the last 30 years. I don't know. Um, yeah, I don't know. If you have some information, go ahead and put that down too. Like I said, I'll probably research it myself as well. But any additional information about it is definitely, what's that word? I will appreciate. It's appreciated. There's a description box if you like to check out any links adjacent to the channel. Maybe you like to join the Discord community, chat with people. Maybe you're somebody who wants to write music. You can join the composition jam that's going on right now in the Discord. You can like, subscribe, and ring the bell. They help out the channel immensely. I'll be back tomorrow at 5 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, 9 p.m. UTC. Probably once again in the dark. It is supposed to rain all week. It is nowhere near nighttime right now, and it looks like I'm recording after dark easily. So this is probably going to be the backdrop for a week. Florida's spring showers. Woo! I'll be back tomorrow, though, 5 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, 9 p.m. UTC, with yet another reaction for Jazz Fusion. Until next time, remember to be critical, not cynical of the music you listen to, and have a fantastic morning, afternoon, or evening. whenever you choose to watch my videos.